Good morning, everybody. The big wooden door of the church just flew open, and I was wondering who was rushing in, and then nobody came in. And having just been through Passover, I think it was Elijah. What do you think? Yeah, ready to spend the day with us. I'm Vanessa Southern. I'm the senior minister of this congregation, and I am joined up here by my colleague, Reverend Laura Shenham, the minister of Congregational Life, Sam King, our beloved worship associate. I'm also joined in worship, by the way, by our gorgeous choir, our soloists, Reiko Odelaine, Mark Sumner, all the tech team who's bringing us worship, but the surprise beloved guest, who's not such a surprise, we've been planning for his arrival for months, is Marco Belletini. Marco Belletini is here as our guest from Columbus, Ohio. Are there other folks who are from Columbus, Ohio who are here today? Oh, yay, welcome. Yay, it's so good to have you with us because today we are having the ordination of Meg McGuire, who was the intern here in 2021 and 22 during COVID and was beloved and brilliant. And so the Columbus congregation and First Unitarian are going to ordain her at 2 o'clock. So we encourage you all to be part of that. And Marco is Meg's childhood minister in Columbus. But he also has another connection here, which is that he was the interim associate here, went to Star King, which is in the Bay Area, interim associate in 1979 and 80, and we ordained him here in this community. He's back here. He did a ministry in Hayward, California for 18 years after he was with us, in Columbus for 17 years. But Marco also has his fingerprints all over Unitarian Universalism and its people. He is very active in our GLBTQ advocacy, especially when we were just beginning to pay attention to dismantling the structures internal and in our institutions of homophobia in our movement. And I think you were one of the first out gay ministers in our movement, yeah, which was a huge road to forge, and we're incredibly grateful for that. Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. And also was part of creating our Service of the Living, our Living Tradition, Singing the Living Tradition hymnal, which we still sing from. And you'll hear a little bit about some of what it meant to be one of the people on the commission and how some of our most beloved hymns made it into that. One in particular, that's one of my favorites. Marco's going to talk a little bit about the history and just all the people that he has mentored over the year, Meg just being one that he helped form. And so we're incredibly grateful to have you back today with us and leading us in worship this morning. If you are here, I hope you have an order of service. If you're on Livestream, you can download one. There's also someone on chat who's going to be there to answer any of your questions. If you're lost or you need some help, they can put links in for you. And just a quick note, masking is optional in our building now, but we encourage you to wear masks, as I see some of you are, to feel comfortable in maintaining your own health and comfort level. I will say that this area is now, so you might have to move unless you put on a mask, because sorry about that. It used to be a nice quiet corner, but the reason it's a quiet corner that's now sort of designated, I probably didn't print enough signs, for those folks who want to be in a masking only section so that you have double safety. And that's for folks who choose to do that for lots of reasons, including being immunocompromised, and we want everyone to feel comfortable. So if you all have any other issues that would make you feel happier, safer in church, you just let me know, and we will see how we can make that possible. So welcome to this hour together.
Now please join me in saying the words of our unison chalice lighting. The words are in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together.
Good morning. Before we sing, I want to tell a little story about this hymn. So when I was chairing the hymn book commission, I was in Boston a lot where we worked, and one day I came back from a meeting, and it was a birthday party for my board chair at the Hayward church. And I told her I would show up and then go home and go to sleep because I was tired. And so while I was there, there was a band playing for the birthday party, and in it was a young man around 18 years old who I knew from the interfaith organization in Hayward. He used to play the organ and other instruments at our interfaith service. So he came up and he saw me, welcomed me, and asked me how I was. I told him I'm tired. He said, why? I told him. He said, so what are you doing? You're making a songbook, a hymn book? And I said, yeah. And he said, can I help? And I said, well, sure, but I need to know how you would help, what kind of composer you are. I don't know, you know. And he said, well, I understand that. Just give me a text that you have no music for, and I'll write something. So we had this text. A couple days later, he calls me over to his place, and he says, oh, I'm finished. And he played this hymn. And I burst into tears because it's so beautiful, so extraordinary. And then later, when we put it in the book, every tune, you may notice, has a name. At the bottom of the page, it's on the right. It's this case, it's Sherman Island. We asked him, what do you want to call your hymn? What's the name you're going to give? He said, Sherman Island. We said, what's that? And he said, it's where I go windsurfing. So if you would turn to hymn 128 in the gray books. And please rise as you are willing and able.
Good morning. I am Laura Shenna, Minister of Congregational Life. If this is your first time attending, let me welcome you in person or on live stream. If you want to get our weekly newsletter, The Flame, or get emailed a reminder about Sunday's live stream link, you can fill out one of our connections forms. They are on the welcome table outside the sanctuary or available through the link in the order of service or video description of today's service. The order of service has upcoming events and links to opportunities to connect. Please engage in all or any or all that are an interest of you. I first want to welcome our visitors today from Napa Valley Unitarian Universalists. We have youth and their director, Ginger, visiting today, so let's welcome them. We are live for registration for the All Church Retreats, so check out the table out in the gallery or online to register for that. Scholarships are available for families and individuals that are members of the church, so please make sure if you need assistance that you fill those out. The deadline for scholarships is at the end of this month, and we'll announce them the following Sunday, so please sign up for that. There is a silly fun for a serious cause. It's a game night on Friday, April 28th in your order of service, so check that out. That's a wonderful thing to be part of. It's for all ages, and lots of fun can be had. We're wrapping up our annual canvas, and we're at about $570,000. Yay! Oh, come on. Our stewardship team is actively calling those who haven't turned their pledges in, so if you haven't turned your pledge in, please welcome the phone call that you will get this week. This is a reminder that next Sunday, April 23rd, during our worship service, the new Reiner awardee will be announced, who is a member of this congregation. This award recognizes members who have demonstrated our Unitarian Universalist values through their actions on social justice issues outside in the wider community. A luncheon reception will be held thereafter to celebrate this awardee, and all are invited to attend. And finally, the big event today. Go out, get lunch, go for a walk, but come back at 2 o'clock today for the ordination of Meg McGuire. Meg was the intern here in 2001-2, and it will be a great celebration. Members Judy Payne, Luann Schulte, and Ben Baer have planned a gorgeous reception afterwards, a non-stop and soul-feeding day. If you drove, you can move your cars over to the parking lot of St. Mark's Church at 1 p.m. So that's the lot off of Star King on the right, and they have allowed us to park there during this afternoon. So let's take a moment now to greet each other, and afterwards we'll say our covenant and doxology. Good morning. So our story this morning is called The Marvelous Loaves. And if you don't know me by now, you know that you need to participate in my stories, right? Yep. So Grandpa Allen is a character. When you hear Grandpa Allen, you cheer. So let's hear a cheer. Okay? The sheriff, we boo. Ready? Boo. All right. So the baker of the marvelous loaves is Grandpa Allen. And Grandpa Allen is a member of the Nottingham Unitarian Church. When he is asked about his bread recipe, he simply says, the secret ingredient is love. And Grandpa Allen always bakes one loaf of bread for the church's annual bread communion. The children and the adults wonder how one loaf is going to feed the multitudes in the congregation. But then Grandpa Allen begins cutting the loaf with the bread knife, and as if by magic, the bread multiplies into 20 loaves. It's a miracle, somebody called out. Don't be ridiculous, Grandpa says. It's a mathematical principle. The youth group was planning to serve food at a soup kitchen on the following Saturday, and during the coffee hour, Barbara, the director of religious education, asked Grandpa Allen if he would bring a loaf to feed the hungry. He agreed. He met the youth at the soup kitchen with a homemade loaf of bread. There were so many hungry people, and as Grandpa Allen cut the bread, it just kept multiplying more and more and more. Well, a secret like that doesn't last long. So, Grandpa Allen, oh, it's getting a little weak. Grandpa Allen, there we go. And his bread were featured on the 6 o'clock news, which is how the town sheriff, and that's right, the sheriff of Nottingham, learned about the marvelous loaves. He was not He was not a nice person. In fact, he was a bully to those around him. And when he saw the news, he knew that he had to get a loaf of that bread. That magical bread would bring a lot of money, and he loved money. So the sheriff went to Grandpa Allen's home and offered, then bargained, then threatened in order to get a loaf of bread. Grandpa Allen refused. You just don't understand. It won't work for you. Nothing personal, but there is a mathematical principle at work here. The sheriff wouldn't take no for an answer. He pushed past him, went into the kitchen, took a loaf of bread, and returned to his home as fast as he could. The sheriff of Nottingham began cutting the bread, dreaming of the riches it would bring him, but the bread didn't multiply. It was dividing into slices and pieces and crumbs. Then the crumbs began dividing again and again until nothing of the bread was left. As Grandpa Allen told everyone who asked, a sound mathematical principle controlled the bread, and it was this: hatred divides, love multiplies.
For another lesson in love, please join me in saying our unison covenant, followed by our sung doxology. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. In high school, my path was set. I knew what classes I would take, what clubs I would participate in. I didn't really have to make any decisions. In college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I briefly tried pre-med, philosophy, political science. I knew I wanted to make the world a better place, but I didn't really know how. When I discovered that I enjoyed computer science, I had no idea how to reconcile that with my values. There weren't many examples of technology being used for public service or civil society. No one that I knew had any connection to a tech nonprofit. There wasn't a standard path for people like me. I might have given up on tech for good entirely before getting started if I didn't find a couple of opportunities right away. We had guest speakers give talks on campus, and one speaker was at a tech nonprofit. And since, as far as I knew, that was the only singular tech nonprofit in the whole world, I decided to try to get an internship there. And there was a student group that put on a 24-hour dance fundraiser for AIDS, and somebody had the great idea to get the computer science students programming to help out the nonprofit with their website while the dancers were fundraising. So I eventually joined the leadership team for that event. One event and one internship were great, and it was necessary for me to get started, but that alone wasn't enough to keep me on that path. I took some classes on social entrepreneurship, basically business school for nonprofits, and I decided to start my own Tech for Good organization that connected computer science students with nonprofits, basically helping other students who are interested in Tech for Good find their own path. One of the best parts of doing that was that it gave me an excuse to talk to folks. Every time I would attend a talk by some nonprofit leader, I would walk up afterwards and sheepishly ask them how a computer science student might help their organization. But it was okay for me to impose myself on them because it wasn't really about me, you see. I had this friend who doesn't really know what he wants to do, and he was wondering about Tech for Good. I had an organization. I was there to help others, and if that helped me figure out what I wanted to do, then so be it. It was still hard to continue on, though. After a frustrating internship at a disorganized nonprofit and some challenges with the organization that I started, I felt like I just wanted something stable, even if that did mean compromising on my values. And at that point, it was mostly just momentum, just luck, that kept me doing something good. But over time, I started to build up this identity as a Tech for Good person. I offered mentorship to folks who are interested, and I still do. I usually have some kind of conversation every couple months. And it's not just the social pressure, it's also something internal, something about how I see myself. Like before, there wasn't a default path, so it was hard for me to find my way. But now that I have this identity, it's like it's the only path that I can see. When you want to do something good and there isn't a clear way to do it, it's hard. Feels like there should at least be somebody to tell you, just follow these 10 steps and then you'll be able to make a difference. So if you're searching for a path and all you find is uncertainty, you're in good company. If you decide to continue on despite the uncertainty, if you surround yourself with the right people, take some risks, then maybe one day, in retrospect, everything will seem inevitable, like it was meant to be.
O love. Sometimes the noise and the bombast of the world simply hurts. My thoughts get tangled, my heart knots up for the sorrows I both bear and witness. And yet, the red-orange quince blossoms, the day-glow California poppies, and the misty wild fennel growing along the tracks of the N. Judah Muni root refuse to stop offering their alleluias until I stop and just notice. Sometimes when I don't keep faith with myself, let alone others, and I find myself pushing myself to the edge of things, not to rest, but to avoid facing what I need to face. The sky itself flings the sun across all my escape routes and heedlessly strews a necklace of planets across the charcoal night to enchant me back to a state of praise and awe. And when the words I say or write no longer bear my experiences along and fail to convey my gratitude for life and love, sorrow and joy, and all that is my life, you, O love, bless me with the great gift of silence. Amen.
Even though the work that Mark and others, members of this community, began to dismantle homophobia in our denomination and in the worlds that we inhabited outside of our churches, some of that work, of course, continues, particularly among our transgender siblings. And so our offering this morning, especially given what's going on in our country right now in particular, is an offering that will go to support our transgender religious professional Unitarian Universalists and the work they do to minister to people in our congregations and beyond. So thank you in advance for your generosity. Our offering for trust will be given and gratefully received.
That hails on you, creation.
Our reading this morning, Could Have, is a poem by the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska, who is Marco Belletini's favorite poet, and rumor has it that in Columbus there would be one reading and the second reading would be the gospel according to Szymborska. Szymborska won the Nobel laureate in 1996. This poem dates 24 years earlier. She writes, "It could have happened. It had to happen. It happened earlier, later, nearer, farther off. It happened, but not to you. You were saved because you were first. You were saved because you were last, alone, with others, on the right, on the left, because it was raining, because of the shade, because the day was sunny. You were in luck. There was a forest. You were in luck. There were no trees. You were in luck. A rake, a hook, a beam, a break, a jam, a turn, a quarter inch, an instant. So you're here? Still dizzy from another dodge, close shave, reprieve. One hole in the net and you slipped through. I couldn't be more shocked or speechless. Listen, how your heart pounds inside me.
I don't know about you, but there have been days in the last couple of months when you might have actually heard my heart beating back in Ohio all the way here to San Francisco. It's been pounding loudly in anguish. The now sadly predictable shootings of children in school or any number of people in stores, houses of worship, playing in their yard, or depositing a check in the bank are simply without end. And the permission to buy assault weapons and other guns without any limits or license is becoming more universal, state by state. The direction our national Supreme Court has taken has incited my fury many times recently and sparked an anguished compassion for all those whose lives are going to be upended by their decisions and plain destroyed in some cases. The legislative malice in states like Florida and Tennessee toward drag performers and my beloved trans siblings is not even surprising anymore. It's happening so often. Sadly, not to expect more of the same to come is to be naive. One senator wants to make same-sex sexuality a crime again. Others suggest that Brown versus the Board of Education should be repealed without the slightest sense of shame, segregating our schools once again. The unsheltered on our streets cover themselves with sleeping bags and cardboard boxes and doorways, or greet me at the freeway exit in this city and also in Columbus. Many people like me or you have roofs over our head and are probably grateful for that. But I know also many people who tell me that the people on the streets are nuisances and embarrassments, and not particularly people whose lives are as important to them as yours and mine are to us. The vitriol, projection, and outright lies among elected leaders shocks even me, who at age 73 once foolishly thought I had grown so old I wasn't capable of being shocked anymore. Can you hear my heart leaping inside me? Breaking, skipping beats, crying out? I can hear many other hearts beating in this room without much difficulty, even without my hearing aids. Szymborska's remarkable poem, however, begins to offer my heart some fresh and necessary insight. As she almost always does in her poetry, Szymborska names many situations in building up to her last startling sentence. In her poem, she's talking about circumstances, that is, things beyond our control. You were in luck. You were not in luck. You escaped. Others didn't. Her words, of course, suggest the horror of the Nazi Shoah, the murder of the Jews, the Roma people, queer people, communists, and even some uncooperative Unitarians like Norbert Čapek. I have in my life talked to more than one person with tattoos on their arm, including here in this congregation, who escaped because of dumb luck. Of course, most didn't. Circumstances. Those born black in a racist nation built on the labor of the enslaved grew up with mostly different circumstances than I did. in a little bungalow in Detroit where I grew up. In 1976, I was a chaplain at the hospital in San Francisco, the University of California Medical Center, where I met a 15-year-old boy who looked about 8, actually, because he was born with cancer. He didn't get it, he was born with it. I was not born with cancer. Circumstances. Some are born in households of violence and abuse, others are not, and experience only love and kindness from both parents or one parent. As a minister of 40 years, I have met those who have seen war firsthand, and others who think that wars are just fought far away and don't intrude on their lives. I've met indigenous people from this continent who have lived in poverty all their lives, and others who grew up in homes that would be great covers for House Beautiful. Circumstances. My beloved friend Christian was a heroin user when I met him in Columbus. He would disappear for weeks at a time. But when I first met him, I intuited immediately from our conversation that he was one of the most brilliant people I had ever met. And I say this once having met Stephen Hawking. I would text him when he was out on the streets shooting up. I would just say, "I'm here, I love you." Often no response for a month. Then he might come back out for a little bit. But believe me, my heart was beating hard the whole time. Is he alive today? But guess what? After almost dying of an overdose, he received remarkable treatment for his situation, addressing all of his childhood abuse. And his mother had plenty of money to help make that happen. Eventually, he graduated magna cum laude from Ohio State and is now living in New York City, attending grad school at New York University and publishing short stories. Circumstances. My friend Robert's circumstances were different, and his beautiful, struggling self finally died of an overdose at age 25. Never once letting his friends or family know how he was crushed by his addiction. You were in luck. There was a forest. You were in luck. There were no trees. You were in luck. You had supportive friends and family. You had no luck, and you didn't know how to tell anybody, including yourself, what you were facing. And you died at age 25. Since I am preaching the ordination sermon for Meg McGuire this afternoon, I've been reflecting on my work as a minister over the years, as a human being who's trying to live a deeper, not shallower life, a life with roots in care with and in struggle against the injustices of the world. I'm trying to work, in other words, on ways to lessen the place of luck and circumstances in people's lives, which try to limit and define our lives, working to end systemic destitution, the great unsheltered populations in the streets of the so-called wealthiest nation on earth, working to get addicts real help, not scorn, working to get medical care for a 10-year-old who was raped in Ohio, needed an abortion in a state that just banned them all, or health care of any kind that doesn't cost a whole lifetime savings. Working to make sure our children, black children especially, are not killed in school or church, or even on the street, like the weaponless Sinze Reed in my city of Columbus, killed at age 13 without a weapon in his hand by a man who just drove past him in a truck, got out of the truck, shot him, and then got back into his truck and drove away. I know, circumstances. There's all kinds of circumstances. People are born with curly hair, red hair, black hair. People are born with all kinds of biological things, including that poor guy in the hospital who was born with cancer. No one chooses the biological circumstances. We just arrive with them. But I see my work as a human being and as a minister to lessen the impact of the social circumstances that have so shredded this nation. Racialization, paying women less than men for the same exact work, the lack of health care or education affordable. It's the circumstances of systems created by human beings that I'm now talking about. So now let me read another poem by the great late black gay poet Melvin Dixon, who died of AIDS and was a professor of literature at Queens College. The poem gives me the title of this sermon, Heartbeats, and it's posthumous, published 3 years after his death in 1992. Work out, 10 laps, chins up, look good, steam room, dress warm, call home, fresh air, eat right, rest well, sweetheart, safe sex, sore throat, long flu, hard nodes, beware, test blood, count cells, reds thin, whites low, dress warm, eat well, short breath, fatigue, night sweats, dry cough, loose stools, weight loss. Get mad, fight back, call home, rest well. Don't cry, take charge, no sex, eat right, call home, talk slow, chin up, no air, arms wide, nodes hard, cough dry, hold on, mouth wide, drink this, breathe in, breathe out, no air, breathe in, no air, black out, white rooms, head hot, feet cold, no work, eat right, cat scan, chin up, breathe in, breathe out, no air, thin blood, sore lungs, mouth dry, mind gone, 6 months, 3 weeks, can't eat, no air. Today, tonight, it waits for me. Sweetheart, don't stop. Breathe in, breathe out. I lived here in California during the AIDS years, especially the early 80s, the late 1990s. In the Bay Area here, lived in Oakland. I buried my best friends over the years, John Zamorowski, Alex Stevens, Dallas Williams, Mark DeWolf, who interned at this congregation, Frank Siskowski, Juan Carlos Oregon, and the amazing Stephen Missler. As a minister in Hayward, I also buried members of the congregation there too. But by the time a real medical response to AIDS showed up, I had conducted over 25 memorial services for people who were not members of my congregation. These were people I deeply loved. I sometimes wonder how I survived those days, such grief, to live unto this sermon today. Oh yeah, circumstances. I didn't suffer from HIV. They did. I was in luck. I dodged it somehow. The newspapers were filled with invective and blame, however. You deserve it. You all need to be quarantined in camps, so we don't get it. You are evil incarnate. You will burn in hell forever and ever. On the way to bury people I loved, I often saw those graffiti scribbled on the walls, even here in San Francisco. Dixon's mighty poem uses the rhythm of a human heartbeat to tell his own story. It's the story of all my friends, too. Friends dying, asking, 3 weeks, 6 months, today, tonight. The government at the time was doing nothing, not even mentioning it. Folks wore masks and gloves in hospitals long before COVID, as if AIDS was contractable by simply breathing, casual contact, a hug. Clergy refused to do funerals for them. How did we get through it? Dixon's poem, like Szymborska's, offers my heart a second application of insightful balm. In sum, our heartbeats in those days pounded to the same rhythm as our dying friends' heartbeats. First, the lesbian community helped change our beds, cooked food for us. Ministers like me did the memorials other clergy would not do. We not only led memorials, but we taught others how to do them, since there were so many that I couldn't do them all by myself. Communities of visitors were organized for us. Project Open Hand fed us. The Unitarian Universalist and Metropolitan Community churches and rabbis at progressive synagogues ministered to us. Allies worked relentlessly to get things changed in hospitals and in the political arena, especially local ones. We reached out to each other even if we had never met, with abundant care and real love. We worked hard to change the circumstances so everyone could say, we're in luck. People are there for us. Oh, we were exhausted, yes, but we knew nobody else was going to do what we were doing. And oh yes, we voted and we marched and we wrote letters in an effort to change society as a whole, but mostly we loved each other with our actions as well as our feelings. Artists and musicians worked with us, singing laments and challenges. Performance artists like Keith Hennessy enlarged our hearts and calmed our heartbeats so that we knew that our hearts weren't the only ones beating, but beating with others. One composer set some of my words to music for an AIDS song cycle, to put music itself at the service of healing, as did many others. I and my friends sat up all night in hospitals with our dying friends and then went to work the next day. Person-to-person service, no expectations from above, from Congress, from presidents or governors. Today, even though AIDS is not the threat it once was, my younger friends are continuing this practice of mutual service, feeding each other when they are too tight in their income to eat well, helping each other pay off school debts or medical debts if they can. It's wondrous to me. I see it all the time. Call it a kind of mutual voluntary socialism if you want, or just call it love in action. But I see it all the time now and note that something is changing in how we can be there for each other now, like we were. Side by side, face to face, we did it. We lost many, but not all. And I use the plural, we, our, us, in all I said about AIDS today and HIV, even though I didn't have it, because I have to imagine that that's what made us being able to do it. by seeing ourselves as a we. We recognized each other as family, broke and sharing together at the great table of life and death, the bread of love, which multiplies when broken in love, not crumbles, as in the story this morning by Laura. And as it did in my generation, such actions begin to tear down systems of circumstance created by human beings who want power over instead of friendship and love with and relationship. Love's purpose, I say, is to change the circumstances for the better, for everyone, universally, no exceptions. If you surround yourself with the right people, said Sam this morning, and take some risks, everything will seem inevitable. Novelist Thomas Mann, Nobel laureate, was a member of our congregation in Los Angeles. And he once wrote in his novel, Magic Mountain, "Love is our sympathy with all organic life." Sympathy, a Greek word which means to feel with, sympathos, feelings of others, for all who are in harsh circumstances, not of their own making. It's a good, simple definition for religious life for me that helps me through times like this. No one can pass a law to command us not to love or feel or hear or identify with the heartbeats of others. So listen now. Can you feel how your heart beats in my chest? Thanks for listening. If you would turn now to 1057 in the Teal books. This is my favorite hymn in the new hymn book. We're going to sing it twice because it's short. If you don't know it, you'll pick it up very quickly. It's just beautiful. Love, wrote the great Toni Morrison, is not a gift. It's a diploma. Let us go into our lives as if we are students eager to learn how to love better today more than yesterday. Let our heartbeats learn love's deeper rhythm, that we may be wise and alive and not only be. Amen.